While this episode wasn't the worst in the series, without a doubt it was the most disappointing. By now I fully expect all the episodes to be bad, but the concept of Marvel zombies in the comics is interesting and a unique take on your typical zombie story. Unfortunately, this episode ignores all of that and gives us a very bland, by-the-numbers zombie story. Marvel's What If is bad. Episode 5. For those of you that may not be familiar with Marvel zombies from the comics, here's a brief explanation. The typical depiction of a zombie is a mindless, slow-moving creature that attacks anything living. Certain stories will try to spice it up a little by making the zombies able to run and climb over things, instead of slowly walking and shuffling around, but for the most part it's all the same. The zombies are pretty mindless and they just want to eat brains, and that's basically it. Marvel Zombies in the comics is completely different. When someone becomes a zombie, that person still retains all of his or her intelligence, the personality, the memories, the ability to speak, but layered on top of all of that is an uncontrollable urge to devour, a hunger that is never satisfied. This creates interesting situations and dilemmas for the characters who still want to try to do the right thing, but they can't because of the hunger. They are aware of what they're doing, and most even have remorse for it. Peter Parker ends up killing Aunt May and Mary Jane, but later he is so disgusted with himself, he quite literally tears off his own face because he doesn't believe he has the right to still be known as Peter Parker. Hence the disappointment when Disney promised Marvel Zombies, but instead of the incredibly unique and creative version from the comics, all we got were the standard mindless zombies that we've seen again and again 1,000 times over.
I'm sad now.
Something else worth mentioning is just how graphic the Marvel Zombies comic could get. I'm talking about the older versions, not the reboots. As I mentioned, the incident with Peter Parker, just know that the Marvel Zombies comic would get far, far worse than even that. Often, some of the stuff that you would see on the Walking Dead TV show would still be considered tame compared to some of the things that happened in the Marvel Zombies comic. It was that brutal. Of course, considering that Disney Plus is meant to be a family streaming service, I'm not surprised at all that they toned it down and even made a lot of that stuff happen off-screen. However, I see this as a greatly missed opportunity because while they did need to tone down some aspects of it, they didn't need to dumb down the zombies as well.
You got any better suggestions?
They could have told a very creative story using intelligent zombies that were trying to outsmart and outplan the survivors, but they didn't. They just went with the mindless zombie thing. But of course, doing something like that would require writers who are actually talented, which is not something that you'll find at Disney. This episode begins as the Hulk was returning to Earth after his fight with Thanos during the beginning of Infinity War. When he arrives, however, Doctor Strange and Wong are nowhere to be found. Upon going outside, he believes that he's too late because there also aren't any people anywhere, and then the arrival of the same two members of the Black Order, Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf. As Ebony Maw is given the same speech as he did in the movie, a portal opens behind him, and Tony Stark, Doctor Strange, and Wong jump out to attack and end up defeating both members of the Ebony Order very quickly. It's then revealed that they have turned into zombies.
Oh no!
Moments later, the two members of the Black Order are also turned into zombies, and all of them now join up to attack Bruce, but he is saved by the Wasp as she single-handedly defeats all 5 of the zombies with no effort at all.
I'm sorry. What?
Right away, there are huge problems and massive plot holes with this episode. I can't believe I'm saying this, but every single problem in this entire episode could be solved with ants.
Ants in the pants?
The first thing is how the zombies behave. They all appear to be the standard mindless zombies that will stand around for days on end doing nothing, or shuffle randomly in different directions. And yet in this fight, we'll see that Tony Stark can still operate the incredibly advanced technology of the Iron Man suit, and Doctor Strange and Wong are both able to use magic as well as the sling ring. So we have to ask, are they intelligent or are they not? And if they are intelligent, why do they just growl and make noises instead of speaking? Because later in the episode, we're going to see that the zombies absolutely are capable of speaking, and yet they don't. So, again, are they intelligent or not? Make up your mind.
He demonstrated that he is, in fact, barely sentient. I mean, it's embarrassing.
I also need to point out that Doctor Strange does have the Time Stone, but for whatever reason, he isn't using it, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, because the zombie version of Doctor Strange uses all the other kinds of magic that are available to him, including the sling ring, and he seems to use all of these in a very strategically intelligent manner, namely by creating portals behind his target. So again, I have to ask, if he's intelligent enough to use complicated magic spells and strategically use the sling ring, then why is he not using the Time Stone? We're going to see later on that zombies can in fact use the Infinity Stones, so why is Doctor Strange not using it here? And the answer is very simple, because if he did, then the episode would just be over already. Also because the writers are terrible and inconsistency is the crutch that they have to lean on.
That is one big pile of shit.
However, the biggest problem in this scene is how 5 incredibly powerful zombies, including 3 that are capable of using magic, are effortlessly destroyed by the Wasp. That alone breaks this episode because of how ridiculously overpowered it is. And yet, despite this, she never does it again for the entire episode.
I have questions.
Let's run through this. Hope Van Dyne was able to effortlessly destroy 5 incredibly powerful zombies in a matter of seconds, using some of the most common insects that exist throughout the entire world. The flying variety of ants might be a little bit more rare, but they still outnumber the amount of humans by an order of magnitude. If the humans wanted to survive this particular zombie attack, the easiest way would be to simply have the Wasp gather up as many flying ants as possible and then just keep them in jars.
Ants in a pit!
She could move from city to city, utterly annihilating every single zombie in the way at absolutely no risk to herself. And sure, it might take a couple months or even a couple years, but she could single-handedly wipe out every single zombie on the planet.
Take your stupid ants in the pants with you!
We'll revisit this later on. Next up, we get a flashback showing how the zombies came into this universe. Once again, Hank Pym is to blame. When he goes into the quantum realm looking for his wife, he finds that this version has been changed into a zombie by some kind of quantum virus. But once again, we have yet another plot hole. In the flashback, we see that Hank is completely overpowered by the zombie Janet outside of the vehicle, and they're a good distance away from this. So there is absolutely no way that Hank is going to survive this. He's going to die and then change into a zombie. And from what we saw with the Black Order a little while ago, it takes about 30 seconds at most after the target dies. So the sequence of events is that Hank goes to the quantum realm, he leaves the vehicle, walks a good distance away, is attacked, killed, and then turned into a zombie by Janet, and then we're expected to believe that Zombie Hank and Zombie Janet had enough intelligence to get back into the vehicle and to correctly operate it, traveling back to their own universe.
You serious?
So if the zombie versions of Hank and Janet are intelligent enough to operate extremely advanced pieces of equipment, then why is it when Hank first arrived, Zombie Janet was doing the standard mindless zombie thing and shuffling in circles? Again, are they intelligent or are they not? Seemingly it appears to change as often as the plot needs it to because, well, shitty writing.
You don't approve. Well, too bad.
We're then shown that the Avengers responded to the initial zombie outbreak, and we're told that this was the worst possible thing to happen because the zombie Avengers were so powerful that they couldn't be stopped, and it resulted in the entire world being changed to zombies within 24 hours. Let me remind you of this scene that happened just a minute ago.
All hope had been lost. Or had it?
The Wasp was able to single-handedly defeat Tony Stark, Doctor Strange, Wong, and 2 members of the Ebony Order in a matter of seconds. Tell me again why it was such a big problem when the Avengers changed. As long as the Wasp can control some flying ants, it doesn't seem to be all that big of a problem.
Excellent point.
But don't worry, it gets worse. We're then treated to a homemade video by Peter Parker explaining the rules and how to survive the zombie apocalypse. We're told that it spreads through the zombie saliva, so you need to avoid being bitten. To do this, everyone should be wearing long sleeves and covering up as much of your skin as possible. This is really important, remember this. The character in the demonstration is Happy, and he's wearing a short-sleeved shirt, which doesn't stop the fake zombie from biting him, but realistically, a simple long-sleeve shirt is not going to be good enough to stop a bite from a zombie, or really most anything above a mosquito, but it's still a good idea to wear multiple layers or thicker clothing to try to prevent any sort of injury. Even low-tech solutions like duct taping a bunch of magazines to your forearms would give you at least some level of protection when the zombie tries to bite you. Train to Busan did a great job of showing how you can do stuff just like this, and side note, that movie is a million times better than this MCU garbage if you want to see something better that has zombies in it.
Is that a fact? That's a fact.
Getting back to the story, Bruce is then brought to the survivor base and we can see who else is in the group. In addition to the Wasp, there's also Spider-Man, Happy, Kurt, Sharon Carter, and Okoye. The group receives a message claiming to have a cure from a SHIELD base known as Camp Lehigh. They decide to travel there, and the safest way to do it is to use a train. The group then heads over to Grand Central Station, and I want to pause it for a second to show you what they all look like as they arrive. Do you notice anything in particular? Despite that little presentation that we saw a minute ago about what sort of things you should do to avoid getting bitten by a zombie, half of them have taken no precautions at all.
What an idiot!
The character of Happy, who was in the demonstration video itself, is still wearing just a t-shirt. Bruce Banner is wearing a sleeveless shirt, which is even worse, and Okoye is only wearing one sleeve for some idiotic reason. Sure, some of the others are wearing at least multiple layers or long sleeve shirts, but why aren't all of these characters wearing some kind of armor or protection? It's simply bizarre, especially considering the little presentation we were just shown. But the situation with Okoye is even dumber because earlier she said her reason for being there was to look for T'Challa, who had gone to help the Avengers, specifically with the zombies. So she was well aware of the situation and what kind of protection would be needed before she ever even left Wakanda. Meaning that even if we assume that the clothing she's now wearing was created with vibranium fibers, which would give some protection against the zombies, for what possible reason would she deliberately leave one of her arms exposed, plus her hands, plus her head? She prioritized fashion over protection from zombies because she's an idiot.
What good are you? Do you have a brain?
At the station, while some of the team are trying to get a train running, they are attacked by a large group of zombies, including some of the former members of the Avengers, specifically two of the worst members of the Avengers, the terrorist-loving Falcon, and soon to be destroyed in his own series, Hawkeye. You know how I've been pointing out the intelligence inconsistency with the zombies, how they're largely mindless until the plot needs them to suddenly be super intelligent in order to operate extremely advanced equipment or even cast magic spells? Well, it's about to get even more absurd. The zombie version of Tony Stark can still perfectly operate the Iron Man suit. Doctor Strange has no problem casting complicated spells and using the sling ring. Hank Pym is easily able to operate the quantum machine, the Falcon can still fly using his suit with no problems, and yet Hawkeye seems to have forgotten how to use a bow and arrow.
How embarrassing.
Because now, for whatever reason, the zombie version of Hawkeye is incapable of hitting a non-moving target at a very close distance, not once, but several times. The first is when Happy is standing completely still, which would have been an unbelievably easy target for Hawkeye, but of course, Happy only gets hit in the shoulder instead of somewhere critical. Happy is then dragged off screen using the rope that was attached to the arrow, and then another arrow comes flying out of the darkness, this time hitting Sharon, not in a critical spot, but instead in the shoulder once more. But the third arrow is even dumber. Sharon is now sitting on the ground with her back against the wall, unable to move, and when Hawkeye releases his third arrow, it completely misses Sharon and sticks into the wall. So just to keep track here, we're supposed to believe that characters like Tony Stark and Hank Pym are able to perfectly operate extremely advanced technology, Doctor Strange and others can perfectly use extremely complicated magic. We see plenty of examples throughout this episode that zombies still retain high amounts of strength and agility, and in many cases, becoming a zombie will enhance strength, speed, and agility for that character, and Hawkeye doesn't really seem to have any significant damages that might impair his ability to do these things, and yet he can't hit the broadside of a barn from 30 feet away.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
It also doesn't make any sense for zombie Hawkeye to deliberately miss or to be more reserved with his arrows, because we've seen plenty of times throughout the episode that any of the zombies will use whatever method they have available to take down the target as fast as they possibly can. So a zombie version of Hawkeye would be aiming for critical hits every single chance he can. So he's definitely not missing on purpose, and he should retain his abilities like the others, so why can't he hit anything? At first, I thought that this was because it was on family-friendly Disney Plus, that perhaps they didn't want to show an arrow going straight through a character's heart, But then I remembered this exact thing happened to Thor several episodes back. When considering all that, it becomes abundantly clear what is actually happening in this scene, and it's a direct result of terrible writing. They want Sharon Carter to be able to survive, so she is given an absolutely absurd amount of plot armor to get out of a situation that she never should have been able to. But don't worry, it gets worse. Before Happy was turned into a zombie, he was fighting them using a glove from one of the Iron Man suits, and every time he launched out a blast, he would yell blam, so he was attacking and he would go blam, 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 blam. Sharon Carter even kind of pokes fun at him for this. But when Happy is turned into a zombie, not only does he retain the information on how to actually activate the Iron Man glove and continue using the energy blasts, he also retains the memory of how to speak. And he is the only zombie that will talk, and he yells blam 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 every time he attacks, even when he's a zombie. And I know that this was added for comedic value, but it's still dumb, because either the zombies can talk, or they can't. So again, this just goes into the entire absurdity of them only being hyper-intelligent whenever the plot needs them to be. Otherwise, they're mindless and they just kind of shuffle in circles.
The buffoonery is endless.
Clearly, the writers couldn't make up their mind. They wanted the zombies to be intelligent, but at the same time, they wanted the zombies to be mindless. It's like spending 5 years going to college only to get a degree in gender studies. It doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, Zombie Falcon is attacking the other members of the group, and Bucky proves himself to be utterly helpless and useless in this situation, needing to be rescued by Okoye, because fucking of course. It's not enough that Bucky was emasculated and kicked around in the series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they have to do it here as well. But on the plus side, at least we didn't have to listen to Falcon lecture us with a racist tirade.
Help! Help! I'm being repressed!
They finally manage to get the train started and believe themselves to be safe until a single zombie breaks in and kills Sharon Carter. Bucky responds to find that it's the zombie version of Steve Rogers. Bucky manages to defeat him by using the shield, and at the same time the Wasp is able to destroy the zombie version of Sharon by shrinking and then enlarging to utterly destroy the zombie. After this, Hope Van Dyne appears to be genuinely disturbed as she says she is covered in Sharon and doesn't quite know what to do about the situation. This was her friend that had just been turned into a zombie and she was forced to destroy it. However, Okoye then makes the extremely inappropriate comment in response that the kid has hand sanitizer, referring to Spider-Man.
I don't think it's funny.
In this scene, Bucky had to take out his longtime friend Steve Rogers, but then he proceeds to make a joke about it. Okoye also makes a joke about Sharon, someone who had been working on their team and was probably friends with everybody in the group. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
Real quick, just go fuck yourself.
I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I've heard that Disney Marvel have requirements that the shows and movies have a certain amount of jokes and comedy that need to be included. But the need to insert these kinds of jokes during what should be very somber moments is incredibly awkward and just plain bizarre, and I would reiterate, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I wonder if you're the worst person I've ever met.
Continuing, the group notices that the Wasp now has an injury on her shoulder and is likely infected. But how could this possibly happen? She didn't really fight with Sharon, she just shrunk down and then enlarged inside and burst the zombie. There was no fighting to be had. There is no possible way that she could have gotten this injury. Also, I double-checked and she didn't have this injury before the incident with Sharon, but again, there's no way that she could have possibly gotten this. But don't worry, it gets worse, because the group now has a discussion about what to do with the Wasp, since she's eventually going to change, and she wants to be dealt with now instead of causing a greater risk later. But suddenly, for absolutely no reason, everyone in the group becomes super friendly and caring, and no one wants to do the deed to take out the Wasp. Spider-Man even gives an inspirational speech about hope and how they can't let each other down. Let me remind you that mere seconds ago, they were making jokes about how the Wasp was covered in pieces of Sharon, someone who was supposedly their friend, and they couldn't possibly care less about that situation, and now we're supposed to believe that they're all super friends. The tone shift is ridiculous, and no, I don't believe for even a moment that these characters care about each other, because just seconds ago, they were making jokes about one of them bursting apart.
You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you.
The now strangely compassionate Okoye suggests that they shouldn't take any action because they're only a few minutes away from Camp Lehigh, and there is a potential cure there. Unfortunately, the train runs out of fuel, and there's an army of zombies between them and Camp Lehigh. Certainly, this seems like a problem that could be very easily solved if someone just so happened to have the ability to control an army of flying ants.
I am back to 1 million ants.
But instead, the Wasp decides to take a much dumber approach by using her powers to grow very large and then carrying the rest of the group over to Camp Lehigh. On the way, she is relentlessly attacked by the army of zombies, but they do make it to the camp and the group is let go inside the fence, but the Wasp is overcome and collapses. It's at this point the rest of the group stop and wonder why the zombies haven't been trying to climb over the relatively small fence, and it's even pointed out that some of the fence is broken, but for some reason the zombies simply are not trying to come in. The character of Vision approaches the group and explains that it's the Mind Stone that emits a frequency that the zombies don't like, so they stay away from it, but of course, this is done in an incredibly stupid way. It stands to reason that this frequency would be emitted equally in all directions, creating an anti-zombie sphere around Vision. So then why would the zombies stop at the fence line? Wouldn't they keep moving forward until they hit the area close enough to the Mind Stone where they would be affected by the frequency? Why would they choose the irregular shape of a fence line around the base to stay out? Also, when Vision walks up next to the group who are only 10 feet away from the fence, why do those zombies that are right nearby not immediately try to get away from the effect of the Mind Stone?
This doesn't make any sense.
And just like all the other Disney Plus shows, this one suffers from lack of attention to detail because the writers are garbage. The situation with the Mind Stone is going to get even dumber later on, but for now, Vision explains that he was able to use the focus energy from the Mind Stone to cure the zombie infection, and it's revealed that Scott Lang has been cured, but now he's just a head in a jar, which I'm sure is supposed to be a Futurama joke, but it just seems out of place here. But stop and think about it. Not even 5 minutes ago, when the group was on the train, there was a discussion about how the Wasp shouldn't throw her life away because there very well could be a cure at Camp Lehigh. And now that they're at the camp and Vision has told them definitively that he has a cure, he could have very easily used that on the Wasp. But no, not a single person in the entire group even brings it up, mentions the fact that she is right outside and that Vision could go out there right now and cure her. No one even mentions it.
I barely have a reason to care, and even I noticed.
This is why I said that I don't believe it at all when they were talking about their feelings and all that other caring about each other when they were on the train. They made jokes when Sharon got taken out, and now nobody even seems to care that they literally have a cure that they could use on the Wasp, who is about 100 feet away.
Besides, I wouldn't want somebody tracing my steps, pointing out all the mistakes I was making.
And there's an incredibly stupid reason why the writers did this, is because at the end of the episode, when the survivors are trying to fly out on one of the jets, they want the Wasp to be able to stand up and try to grab the plane, and it's going to be a big surprise, and then Scott Lang can see her and make his sad comments and that sort of thing. When in truth, they should have just taken Vision and gone outside and cured her right then and there. But they didn't, because the show is garbage. So while the group is letting the Wasp rot outside the fence, they come up with a plan in order to broadcast the Mind Stone frequency, but in order to do so, they will need something powerful enough to transmit it across the entire planet, and therefore they need to travel to Wakanda, as it's the only place left that still has the technology available. Bucky leaves the group saying that he's going to search the base to find a vehicle for transport. And I have to point out this is completely unnecessary because Vision has been on the base for an extended period of time, and if there were any vehicles here, then he would know exactly where they are. And this is proven later in the episode when he tells the group where the vehicles are. So there's absolutely no reason for Bucky to search the base, but it needs to happen so the plot can move along because the writers don't know how else to handle it. So while Bucky is performing his unnecessary search, he happens to find an injured T'Challa and a zombie version of Wanda.
It's very convenient.
Very convenient.
This leads the group to confronting Vision, where he confesses that he was unable to cure Wanda because she was too powerful or something, and then he couldn't destroy her because he loves her. But just then, Wanda breaks out of her confinement and kills Kurt and Okoye, and then the group manages to escape the building, and Vision says that there is a Quinjet in the hangar, which probably should have been the first place that Bucky looked, instead of wherever the hell he wandered off to, but he needed to search the base so that the plot could move along.
This is terrible.
Here's a little writing tip for you. If the only way that you know how to progress your plot is to deliberately make your characters stupid and blunder into things, you're probably doing it wrong. But don't worry, it gets worse. Vision then says that he can't leave with the group because he must atone for what he's done, so he tears the Mind Stone out of his own head, destroying himself, and then Bruce picks it up. And at this point, all of the zombies suddenly begin rushing into the base.
Oh no.
I can't help but notice this seems a bit unusual because it's the Mind Stone that was supposed to be keeping them at bay. It's the stone that was emitting the frequency, not Vision. It's the stone that was used to cure the zombies, not Vision. So why is it now just suddenly not working? Does the Mind Stone need to be embedded inside someone's head in order for it to be effective? What are the rules here?
I'm not sure I see the consistency here.
Anyways, Bucky gets taken out by Wanda, and the zombies are now on the verge of breaking into the hangar, so Bruce convinces the Hulk to help him one last time so that they can go out as heroes, because apparently the Mind Stone decided to take a fucking vacation day. The Hulk manages to fight Wanda while distracting the other zombies so that the rest of the group can escape. We're left with T'Challa, Scott, and Peter as the only survivors, and eventually they do make it to Wakanda. However, it's revealed that Thanos has arrived on Earth, and while he does have the Infinity Gauntlet with 5 of the stones, he has also been turned into a zombie. The Watcher then implies that this will result in the end of that universe.
And nothing of value was lost.
This episode was not only disappointing as a terrible version of Marvel Zombies, but it was also frustratingly illogical from start to finish. Most everything in the story happens as a result of the characters deliberately being stupid or absurd plot contrivance, rather than plausible cause and effect. But as for the What If series, this isn't even the bottom of the pile. Trust me, the worst is still yet to come. But that's the end of episode 5.